Balancing spending and saving is often like walking a tightrope. So even when you know that you need to give your savings some attention, you also want to enjoy life and spend on things that matter. Now, most of us have heard the typical advice: cut back on dining out, stop impulse shopping, and make a budget. But sometimes you have to go beyond that and get a little creative. And one way to curb spending and get your savings to where it needs to be is to adopt the 2 yeses rule. And here's how it works. Whenever you're about to make an unplanned or impulse buy, ask yourself if you can say yes to both the item and an equal amount going into your savings. For example, if you're eyeing a $100 jacket, can you also set aside $100 for your savings? And if the answer is no, hold off on buying the item and then put the money that you would have spent into savings. This rule creates a mental framework that encourages you to take a moment, pause, and think twice before buying something that you really don't need. It also brings saving money to the forefront because some people are able to save, but they don't because they simply don't think about it. However, with this approach, saving can become an active part of your decision-making process and not an afterthought. In addition, you can create themed weeks for your spending. So instead of trying to cut back on all categories at once, which can feel restrictive, focus on themed weeks for your spending. For example, one week could be home cooking week, where you focus on buying food and cooking and skipping takeout, and the next week could be entertainment week, where you enjoy budget-friendly activities and so on. This strategy allows you to indulge in certain areas while naturally cutting back in others, so you're essentially rotating your funds so that you don't derail your budget. And giving yourself permission to spend in certain categories is so crucial because you're able to enjoy life while keeping your financial goals in check. Now, sometimes a little guilt does come into play when you're trying to save. So a creative solution is a 50-50 guilt-free splurge. So whenever you get an unexpected windfall, whether it's a tax refund, a bonus, or a gift, allow yourself to spend 50% guilt-free while the other 50% goes straight into savings. This is a balanced way to enjoy extra money without feeling like you're being irresponsible or that you have to save every penny. So you're able to find that sweet spot between living in the moment and planning ahead. Another tip is to treat your spending like a sprint. So pick a short time frame like 2 weeks and challenge yourself to only spend on essentials. And these include housing, transportation, food, utilities, and any other expense that isn't a choice. And the key here is really to make it temporary and not a long-term budget plan, because if you do it that way, you might burn out. And when you loosen up after the sprint, you might find that your habits have shifted for the better. These short periods of controlled spending allow you to save aggressively for a little while, and then you're able to ease back into a more balanced spending routine. Plus, this can be a refreshing way to really reassess your relationship with money. So at the end of the sprint, take time to reflect on how you feel about your spending habits. You may find that you've developed a better sense of what you need in your life. In addition, before buying something, realistically think about how much joy it will bring you today compared to how you'll likely feel about it in 6 months or a year. Often, the excitement of purchases fade quickly, so ask yourself, will this still be valuable to me in the future, or is it just about a momentary high? And another thing that you can do is think about similar things that you've bought and consider whether you've actually gotten value from them. Because if those purchases didn't live up to your expectations, this might not either. And by training yourself to evaluate the long-term impact of your buys, you can develop a more strategic approach to spending, which could lead to more fulfilling purchases and less buyer's remorse. And finally, limit emotional spending by setting money boundaries. Emotional spending, whether it's grabbing something because you're stressed, bored, or feeling down, can quietly sabotage your budget. It is so easy to justify retail therapy in the moment. And there's research suggesting that it does work, which is why so many people default to it and feel better after. But even so, if this becomes your go-to method for coping, you're gonna dig yourself into a hole. So what you want to do instead is establish money boundaries that make you pause and check in with yourself. For example, you can commit to only shopping when you're in a good headspace, or take a 10-minute break before making any purchases. And during this time, you can cool off by listening to music, taking a walk, or diving into a project, even if it's one that doesn't excite you. And the goal is simply to pause and create a space that allows you to recognize when you're buying something to fill an emotional gap versus an actual need.